Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Quick Launch Live. I am Frank Data Di Lorenzo. Very excited today to bring a great guest speaker into the session. So we'll make that introduction in a moment. Just a quick housekeeping. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. We'll make sure we address them. And instead of putting a one if you're watching live, let's have a little fun. Love to know where you're viewing this from. So if you wouldn't mind, if you are live with us today, just put what city you're in and where you're watching us from. That would be fun. Remember, all these events are on our preferred strategies company LinkedIn page. If you go to events, all the Quick Launch Live recordings are there. So feel free to watch any of them at your leisure. If you do watch, maybe just put a quick note in there. At hashtag watched after something. It's just great to know that these are being viewed and consumed and hopefully adding value. Remember, the spirit of these sessions is to just take 15 minutes and discuss any data related topic that can be beneficial to you, give you some awareness, bit of education, which is interesting because that's what we're talking about today, and some ideas and food for thought. However, everybody at Preferred Strategies is passionate about data and helping you get your arms around it, gain insights from your data. So if you have questions or want to take a topic deeper, certainly reach out to us. We would be happy to help. Okay, let's see who we have on with us. Hey, Ben from Loomis and Tyler from Folsom. Welcome today. Glad you're with us. All right, so without further ado, it's my sincere pleasure to introduce to you, hailing from Colorado, and interestingly, did not move there. A native of Colorado. I don't meet very many. Native to Colorado, has been on the Preferred Strategies team for over 3 years. Is our director of education and just does a tremendous job. I can't even bring that across enough. And we have someone from Texas. I love it. That's great. So please join me in welcoming Miss Michelle Workmeister. Ooh, my
Oh,
Boston accent. Wait, let me try again. Miss Michelle Workmeister. Sorry. Michelle, welcome.
thank
Um,
you, Frank.
so, what I had asked Michelle to take time out of her busy schedule and talk about, as we all probably know, and I've experienced this over my 38 years in the industry, successful implementations of any technology project really, it's imperative that there's solid education and training for your users to be able to adopt that new technology, whatever it is. In our case, it's data analytics, BI with Power BI. But there's a trend. If someone just jumps in and they're not educating their team, much higher chance of a failed project. Education is there, success goes up, and adoption goes up much more quickly. So I asked Michelle if she would come on and just share from her vast experience as our director of education some tips, some ideas, some food for thought. So, Michelle, if you wouldn't mind just kind of opening up your thoughts on that, I think it would be great.
Great. Thank you, Frank. And thank you everybody for watching and joining us. So I am excited to talk to you a little bit about education. It is something I am passionate about. So um, in kind of my history and coming up in my career, I've always learned a product and then once I felt really good about the product, moved right over into training. I think it's really important to understand the products you train to be a good trainer. So I love that. I still, Frank introduced me as the director of education, but I still actually hold dual titles here at Preferred Strategies as a BI solutions consultant as well. So, I kind of balance my time between, working with customers and then training. And I think that is so important because it gives me some stories and real world experience to bring into the classroom. So, with that, I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about education and what I think is really important. And if I had to really boil it down to one thing, it is giving users the right information at the right time. Um,
Mhm.
so many times when I see people coming on board and trying to learn new products and learn new technologies, it's all about just how much information they can get right at the beginning and then it's kind of done. And so, today we're going to talk specifically about like Power BI training and what you can do in Power BI. And there are so many ways to get trained in Power BI. You can Google it, right? There's online classes, there's certification classes, there's Udemy classes. You can just watch YouTube videos, and there's so many ways to learn it. Unfortunately, I don't feel like that's the best way for users to learn it. I know when I talk to companies, and I'm working with our some of our customers on their education strategy. We go, well, how are you going to bring on a new user? Oh, they'll just learn it. Sally's really smart. She can pick up anything. And
Yeah.
that's fair to do to your users.
Mhm.
It's not a good place for them. There's so much information out there, like I said. And what I found with Power BI is there are so many features within the product, but they only work in certain scenarios or certain situations. So how did you bring your data in? Where did that data come from? How often is the data refreshed? All of those will impact which features and functionality within Power BI work. When I first started learning Power BI, that's what I did. I Googled it, I kind of played with the tool. And what I found is I spent hours trying to learn how to do something only to find out that didn't translate into the data I was working with. So you don't want to waste your users' time, and it becomes very defeating to users and really discouraging as they start in this journey of learning this new product. So the other problem with it is users don't even know what to ask. If they've never seen Power BI, they don't even know that there's different tools that they could use, or what's the difference between a filter and a slicer. How do you Google how do I create a slicer if you don't even know that terminology or what it is? So I just really encourage people to think about how they're going to train users and how you're going to educate them within the tools, any tool, not just Power BI, but any tool, and don't leave it up to them to self-educate. So
You know,
yeah, go ahead, Frank.
no, Michelle, I don't want to interrupt you. You're definitely on a good roll, so I'll wait. But I have a thought I wanted to interject when you're ready.
No problem. Yeah, most of us don't need a PhD in Power BI to do our jobs. And so what I found that works when you start looking at users and educating them is to really focus initially on providing them a strong foundation, giving them what are the basics, what are the terminology, what's a very high level understanding of the technologies that are involved in the platform that's involved, and then helping them to grow from there. So I love I love training over customers' data. I believe it's important for users as they come on board that they are learning on their data. That way, you're only introducing one new component or one new element at a time. When you take a generic training class and you're learning how to do things over, some sort of demo data, you don't always get a true picture of what things are going to look like. So I think it's really important as you look at educating your users that all your education is happening over your data so they can focus on the technology and not so much on trying to understand the concepts. You also don't feel like it's a magic show, right? Um, that everything always works, everything's always beautiful in Disneyland, right? When the data is right there and it's set up to do that example, it works great. But when you're in your situation and you're looking at your data, you understand your numbers, then you can actually make the report make more sense. So, and the third thing I think that works and that's really important is you want to always leave your learners feeling empowered and excited about whatever tool you just taught them. You don't want them walking out of that session feeling overwhelmed or confused, feeling like there's so much, I forgot more than I learned. They should never feel that way coming out of a session. One of my favorite things is, I believe in surveys. So we do surveys at the end of class and we ask a question. What was your knowledge coming into the class? And what is your knowledge leaving this class? On a scale of 1 to 5. And typically people come in with like a 2 or 3. And I love when they leave and they're like, I'm an 8, I'm a 9, I'm a 10. And I'm thinking, oh, there's no way I could have made you a 10 in Power BI. But I'm glad you feel you are a 10 in the knowledge I presented. In what I've shown you, you feel that confident. That's when I know I had a successful class. So it's not about the quantity of information that you're teaching your learners or sharing with them, but it's the quality. How well have you gotten that concept across? How well do they understand that concept? The better they understand it, the more likely they are and the more successful they'll be at applying it in any scenario. So,
Hey,
yeah.
We did get a quick question. I just wanted to insert because you mentioned it, and then someone popped a question in there. What is the difference between a slicer and a filter?
Oh, such a great question. Um, From a user perspective, they ultimately do the same thing. I always think of a slicer as something the user will change all of the time when they run that report. What are the most commonly changed items,
Mhm.
or the items that you want to be flexible? A period, a year, a company, a department, an inventory item, where whenever I go in here and I look at this, that's going to be that element. It will always be on the page, and right up there, kind of in their face, and it's really ease of use. Filters kind of sit back behind the scenes, and they more limit the data that we're bringing back or retrieving. So I kind of think as filters, like when you're going, I don't know, I always have to use analogies. You go to the kitchen and you
Mhm.
gather everything you're going to need to bake a cake. That's your filter. You pull everything out of the cabinets, you set it on the counter. Your slicer is when you really get precise about which pieces you're going to put into that cake mix or that batter, to
So,
make it. So,
Michelle, if I were just thinking out loud with you, if I was a project executive and I managed the West Coast, I might have a filter that just always sets that dashboard or report, if you will, to the West Coast. I'm probably never going to change it. But every time I'm in there, I get 8 project managers that report to me. I'll be slicing by that all the time. Is that a reasonable example?
correct. Yes. Yes. If your
Okay.
report would always be the West for the West Coast, then that would be a filter. And then the slicers get you more focused in. Yeah.
And Michelle, you addressed these. This is so on point. I'm so excited. But the two things I kind of had written down, and in this experience may no longer be applicable because it's so old, I know. But years ago, when I was working with one ERP, I had to just learn to write crystal reports. And I got okay at writing crystal reports, more and more comfortable. So when I moved over to work with a completely different ERP, and they said, we use crystal, I went, great, I'm trained, I know it. It was like starting anew because when I went to I mean, I knew Crystal, but the data was so different. Now, again, maybe that's not as relevant in um, today's world, but that's what I was thinking about when you were just explaining over their own data or real examples. So I don't know if that applies, but yeah.
No, I absolutely think that applies, Frank. So you're right on there. So, yeah.
Excellent. And then you mentioned quick wins. That was something else I had jotted down earlier. I love what you said about empowering the users. I think if someone goes into training a little nervous, a little unsure, or the opposite, maybe a little overly confident, this is going to be too easy. Either way, but if they come out of it, empowered and feel more in tune with what they're supposed to be learning, that's a real powerful thing. That's a great start. And if they come out with a report you've written with them, that's a quick win all around. And with Power BI, there's a lot of education needed. I've had folks show me what they think is a fantastic dashboard, but it was really a report. So some folks even understanding that difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely. As you're walking in and you're looking at educating your users, especially in Power BI, you just want to keep it very focused. Again, give them a strong foundation, give them tools to grow, and improve. And I think the most important thing take away from this class is just to remember, with Power BI especially, education is a journey, it's not an event. So they're not going to go to one class and come away knowing everything they need to know. They're going to go to one class, which is going to get them started, hopefully get them hooked and excited about the tool, and then they're going to want to learn more. That's whenever you start doing the Googles and the Udemy classes, or you start looking at YouTube videos and you're seeing how to do things, how do you enhance and improve items. But just always remember that as you start and roll this out to your users, this is just the beginning of where they're going to start. So I have a whole nother section that I was hoping to get to, but time flies by here.
Well, that's
Um,
a great segue, Michelle,
and
because we are going to ask you back to continue this. I knew 15 minutes would be too short. So is there
oh,
any way I could pretty please ask you to consider joining us next week?
Absolutely. Next week, what we'll talk about, we'll take part two of this, and we're gonna focus or look really at what are the three things you can do as a leader, decision maker, influencer within your organization to ensure success within your reporting solution, and definitely and how does that tie into the education piece. So how does education flow into that, and how can you influence it?
Michelle, that's great. And we did have one more question. So if you could answer it, we're right at the 15-minute mark, but I'll throw this out to you. Since we mentioned dashboard versus report, what is the difference there? Someone asked.
the difference between a dashboard and a report, think of a dashboard like the Cliff Notes version of your reports. So if you have 5 reports that you need to do your job in a day, you can go through each of those reports, pick out the most important component, or what is that key factor that tells you, is there a fire you need to put out, versus everything's looking good and I can come back and focus on that later in the day when I have time. That dashboard is going to highlight those items for you. So it's the Cliff Note version of all of your reports. So,
I
or if you
love
have
that.
a report. Yeah.
That's a great description, Michelle. Well, Michelle, listen, I sincerely thank you. I know how busy you are, and you took time out of your day to share some insight, tips, and I think a lot of value with folks out there in LinkedIn land. And folks, I'm thrilled that mark your calendars next Thursday, 8 a.m. Miss Michelle, I changed your name, Michelle. Michelle Education Workmeister will be joining us. So thank you again. I'm Frank Data DiLorenzo, Preferred Strategies. We are all about your data. Please reach out to any of us if we can help. I just popped up our website there as a convenience if that's helpful. And everybody have a great day. Thanks again, Michelle.